Roger?
Oh, there we go. Good morning. This is the time and place for the planning hearing officer hearing of September 8th, 2021. My name is Roger Kiesel, and I will be conducting the hearing as a hearing officer. Due to the COVID-19 novel coronavirus and health recommendations from the LA County Department of Health, this hearing is being conducted virtually with no members of the public present. The public is encouraged to watch and participate from the safety of their homes to practice social distancing. The meeting can be viewed on local cable TV and is being streamlined online at the city's website at www.glendaleca.gov. For public comments and questions during the meeting, please call 818-937-8100. Again, that's 818-937-8100. City staff will be submitting the questions and comments in real time to the appropriate person. We have one case on the meeting tonight involving discretionary permit applications. It's a parking reduction permit. The hearing will proceed as follows. First, I will read a description of the application or request. Then I will read reports received from other city departments and other letters or communications from interested parties. The case planner will then make a brief overview of the case, give analysis, and make a recommendation. The applicant will then be connected in by telephone, stating both the name and address, and will be asked to present the case within a 15-minute time period. Others in support of or opposition to the application and interested parties will be connected by telephone to comment, again, clearly stating their name and address within a 3-minute time period. Finally, the applicant will be given the opportunity to make closing comments, if desired, in response to the testimony given by preceding speakers within a 5-minute time period. The hearing will then be closed and taken under submission. Findings. If the evidence presented in the application and at the hearing meets the required findings set forth in the municipal code, then the project can either be approved or approved with conditions. If the findings of fact are not evident, then the request will be denied. Decision. After the hearing, the decision will be prepared in writing and will be in the form of a letter sent to the applicant and to all persons who responded to the public notice, either by speaking at the hearing or by submitting written responses and have provided their name and mailing address. The date of the decision will be the date appearing on the letter. Records of decisions for all projects will then be posted online on the Planning Division's website. Appeals. Under the appeal provisions of Title 30, Chapter 30.62 of the Glendale Municipal Code, the decision may be appealed to the Planning Commission within 15 days of the date of the decision. Anyone wishing to appeal must contact the case planner to obtain forms and information regarding the appeal process and submittals. Public notification of this hearing was accomplished using or by the use of public notices which were mailed to property owners located within 500 feet of the subject site, physically posted on the site in question, and placed in the local newspaper. I would also like to inform everyone that the official proceedings of the planning hearing officer's hearing are being televised live and may be viewed online on the city's website. Okay, as I mentioned before, we have one item on the agenda tonight, or to this morning, I should say. That's a parking reduction permit Parking reduction permit PPRP 2004082. The address is 901 through 919 South Grand Boulevard. And the project description is as follows. The applicant is requesting a parking reduction permit to provide a total of 450 parking stalls, where 548 parking stalls are required per our zoning code, for the city zoning code, for development of the new vehicle inventory parking structure for Pacific BMW car dealership. The applicant is proposing to construct a new 5-story, 171,140 square foot above ground parking structure with rooftop parking on an existing 81,148 square foot site located in the CA commercial auto zone. The proposed project involves demolition of existing surface parking lot an existing 561 square foot accessory building, and removal of existing solar panel structures that will be relocated to the rooftop of the new structure. An initial study was prepared for the project and circulated for the 20-day review period starting August 3rd. Until August 23rd, 2021. Okay, let me go through comments from other departments. All right, from Public Works Maintenance Services. They state that no protected trees are located on the site. And the street trees, which look like they're Mexican fan palm trees, need to be maintained, and they've got conditions on that. And then 3 new street trees planted in between the palm trees also need to be installed. Those trees are crepe myrtle. There are other comments that are related to the planting of those 3 trees. Building and safety. Those are just standard comments, it looks like. Fire department, they're requiring fire sprinklers, fire department access to approved fire department access roads will be required for this building. And some comments on gurney access. Looks like standard conditions from GWP. And it looks like standard conditions from from Public Works, including dedicating to the city a 5-foot wide strip of land along Acacia. And then from traffic, pretty standard comments, including construction traffic control plan. That needs to be, it looks like, approved by traffic prior to construction of the project. So those were the comments from other departments. Why don't I turn it over to Ms. Vista Azadi for a brief presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm just going to share my screen. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes, I can now.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Kiesel. This is parking reduction permit number PPRP 2004082 for the project site located at 901 through 919 South Brand Boulevard, also known as Pacific BMW. The applicant is proposing to construct a new 5-story, approximately 171,000 square foot above ground parking structure with rooftop parking. The project involves demolition of the existing surface parking lot and existing accessory building that was relocated to the site in 1964 and removal of the existing solar panel structures to be relocated onto the roof of the new parking structure. In conjunction with the development, the applicant is requesting a parking reduction permit to provide 450 parking spaces for the above ground parking structure where the code requires 548 parking stalls. The project site is approximately 1.8 acres with frontage on 3 streets, South Brand Boulevard, West Garfield, and West Acacia Avenue. The site is located in the commercial auto zone and is located along the South Brand Boulevard of cars. Surrounding development includes primarily vehicle dealerships as well as a storage facility on the corner and some multifamily residential development. The site is part of the Pacific BMW dealership, whose main office is located approximately 1 block north at 800 South Brand. The project site currently features the collision center with operations on site that include vehicle and auto body repair, service, and retail sales. There are currently 3 detached commercial buildings on the site, a 1-story, approximately 18,000 square foot building originally constructed in 1924, a 1-story, approximately 9,000 square foot building originally constructed in 1964 and then expanded again in 1981, and a 561 square foot accessory building that was relocated to the site and enlarged in 1964. The existing buildings are not currently listed on any local, state, or national register of historic resources, and with the exception of the corner building at 901 South Brand, they are not eligible for listing. The existing dealership building on the corner, 901 South Brand, and the existing service garage will not be altered as part of the project, and they will be maintained as is. This is an aerial that shows the project site in relation to the surrounding development. This area right here where my mouse is pointing is the area where the new structure will be located. And this is a site plan for the project. The area in yellow is the new parking structure, and it shows it in relation to the existing development. These are the floor plans for the project. The ground floors 2 through 4 are relatively the same, and this is for the roof. As it relates to the parking reduction request, the parking requirement in the code is greater than what will be needed for the project. While vehicle dealerships are a retail use and require retail parking at 4 per thousand, they're not like a typical general retail use, as they need more inventory storage for their merchandise, which are generally large cars that take up a significant amount of space for storage and display. The scope of work also is to provide a structure for inventory, and there does not include any additional floor area for the retail or service areas. As the scope of work is related to a parking structure only, the parking that is contained in the new structure does not in and of itself generate the need for additional parking to be provided, and the intent of the parking regulations is being met. This slide is just to show you the primary elevation facing South Brand Boulevard. As it relates to environmental review, an initial study was prepared for the project and circulated for the required 20-day review period from August 3rd to the 23rd. During this time, staff received one comment letter, which was responded to in the final mitigated negative declaration and included as Exhibit 6 with the staff report. The hearing officer will be required to consider and adopt the final MND prior to approval of the parking reduction. As it relates to public comments received, staff did receive one comment letter yesterday afternoon, which includes comments related to the MND. All comments received are on file with the planning department and are part of the public record, and copies of all comments have been provided to the hearing officer for consideration. Staff is recommending approval of the parking reduction permit with conditions subject to the draft findings and conditions of approval included as Exhibit 1 to the staff report. That concludes my presentation, and I'm available for any questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mrs. Ati. Why don't we go to the applicant next for their presentation, and then I've got some questions for either the applicant or staff to answer.
Sure. Good morning, Mr. Kiesel. My name is Rodney Kahn. My offices are located here in the city of Glendale, and I am working with representatives from Pacific BMW, along with our architect, Robert Plant, on this project. There's a few things I'd like to add to staff's presentation. As was mentioned, the subject site is part of the Pacific BMW dealership that's located about a block away. Pacific BMW has been in operations in our city for many, many years, in fact, decades. The Ho family own the land, they own the business. They are a very well-respected family. They are professional business people, and they've been doing an outstanding job running these facilities. Our architect has designed this parking structure to be respectful to the buildings on site and to the buildings off site. This parking structure design will be further analyzed as it goes through the city entitlement process at the design review board level at a future date. This parking reduction request that we're speaking about here today is a unique circumstance. It's actually kind of a code technicality, if you will, where we are required to provide parking for a parking structure. So there is no expansion of the retail sales area proposed. There is no expansion of the hours of operation. It's the same hours of operation, same days of the week as it's always been. And there will be no customers that will use this inventory parking structure. It will only be used to store inventory, and that inventory is automobiles. As was detailed, an environmental analysis was done as part of this project. and it was analyzed, as you know, in terms of an initial study. That study addressed 21 different items for potentially significant impacts. That analysis resulted in what is a final mitigated negative declaration. That document was thoroughly analyzed, and in fact, there is a mitigation monitoring and reporting program along with the negative declaration itself. We've reviewed those documents. The final mitigated negative declaration agree with its conclusions. We also agree with the mitigation measures, and we will make sure to comply with them as part of our overall project. We did also review the different conditions that were associated with the parking reduction request and would obviously agree to comply with those as well. That will conclude my part of the presentation. If any other members from our team, Mr. Plant, any representative from Pacific BMW, they may want to add on to what I've already said. If not, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Yes, this is Robert Plant. I'm the architect for the project at 686 Diamond Street, Laguna Beach. I'd like to add one aspect to it. This building will end up being a consolidation for Pacific BMW's operations. Currently, they're using 6 lots in the surrounding areas to store their inventory. All that inventory would come onto this one building, which should reduce significantly the traffic around the current BMW store. That's all I would like to add at this point.
Anybody else from the applicant team? Nope. Okay. Do we have any callers?
Yes, we do. We have 2 callers. The first caller is Mr. Richard Drury. Mr. Richard Drury, you're live on the air with the planning hearing officer.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. My name is Richard Drury, and I'm with the law firm of Lozo Drury, LLP. We have submitted 2 written comment letters on the project. We're representing the Supporters Alliance for Environmental Responsibility, which has members who live or work in the city of Glendale. I just want to first point out, we're not actually opposed to the project. We think, however, that the environmental analysis is inadequate and that an environmental impact report is required to analyze the project's impacts and to make sure that they are fully mitigated. Yesterday, we submitted a 94-page comment letter, and I didn't hear any discussion of it at all, which is somewhat surprising because we raised very significant environmental issues supported by the expert analysis from the firm of Soil, Water, Air Protection Enterprise in Santa Monica, in particular environmental chemist Dr. Paul Rosenfeld and hydrogeologist Matthew Hageman. Our experts concluded that the hazardous impact analysis is inadequate for the project because there's been no adequate phase 1 environmental assessment. These types of facilities often have soil contamination from historic use or in and around automobiles. Phase 1 assessment is very typical, and it hasn't been done. Next, SWAPE concluded that the air quality assessment is inadequate because several input parameters were inaccurate and underestimated the project emissions. In particular, the CAL-EMOD model underestimated the size of the structure, underestimated the amount of grading by about 30%, underestimated demolition activities by about 30%. All of these resulted in an underestimation of air quality impacts of the project. Next, SWAPE concluded that the project would have significant health risks from air quality, from diesel particulate matter, from construction equipment, and also from ongoing operations. Now, the nearest sensitive receptor is a multifamily residence only 50 meters away. SWAPE calculated that the cancer risk at that receptor would be 68 in a million. That is almost 7 times higher than the South Coast Air Quality Management District CEQA significance threshold of 10 per million. That impact has to be analyzed in an EIR and feasible mitigation measures imposed, which exist. Next, SWAPE calculated that the project has an inadequate energy analysis. CEQA requires analysis of energy impacts of the project. The initial study simply relies on compliance with Title 24. The case law holds that simple reliance on Title 24 is not adequate under CEQA. Finally, SWAPE calculated that the greenhouse gas analysis was inadequate because the initial study fails to calculate GHG emissions of the project, and SWAPE proposed numerous feasible mitigation measures that have been suggested by Cal EPA and the Attorney General's office. We asked the hearing officer reject the mitigated negative declaration, require preparation of environmental impact report to ensure that these impacts are fully analyzed and mitigated. Thank you.
Sorry. Thank you. Is there another caller?
Yes, I'm
Yes.
here.
The next caller is Mr. Johnny Perez. Mr. Johnny Perez, you're live on the air.
Hi, I live on the 200 block of West Garfield, and I'm an active member of this community and neighborhood. As it stands, there is a severe lack of parking in this neighborhood, due in part to the BMW dealership not supplying parking for their employees. As a result, the people who actually live in this neighborhood have a very difficult time finding parking. Around 5 years ago, the neighborhood started implementing permit parking, but unfortunately, for whatever reason, I don't know if it's a lack of resources or not prioritizing it, but the permits are simply not enforced. The people that live here, year after year, are having to pay for permits that are not being enforced properly, and BMW employees continue to park in the permit zone. Now they want to build a 5-floor structure for inventory, and they don't even want to supply the required minimum of parking spaces. This is literally the most successful BMW dealership in the entire country. I find it hard to believe that sacrificing some space for inventory in order to give their employees parking will hurt their bottom line much. Furthermore, on a daily basis, big rig trucks that load and unload inventory on Garfield Avenue consistently block the driveways of homes and apartments while they wait for their turn to load and unload cars. Oftentimes, the truck drivers are nowhere to be found. What are we to do if there's an emergency and someone is blocked into their driveway due to these big rigs? What are BMW's plans to put a stop to this? This specific issue has been brought to the attention of Council Member Artie Kasakian, and I have provided him with many, many photos and videos over the last 6 years, and there's a very long paper trail to prove this. Why is BMW allowed to unload and load their inventory on Garfield Avenue, a small, narrow residential street? Why does the city do nothing about this despite it constantly being brought to their attention? Whose needs is the city going to prioritize? The largest BMW dealership in the country or the people that live in this neighborhood? That is all.
Thank you, Mr. Perez. Villy, is there anyone else online?
No, there are no other callers.
Thanks. All right. Mr. Khan and team, do you want to respond to any of those comments from the callers? You have 3 minutes. Or 5 minutes.
I can respond to a few of the comments, and then I'll defer to my colleagues at Pacific BMW for the others. Specifically as it relates to this 94-page document that was referenced, that was actually, I guess, sent to the city late yesterday, and then we received it this morning. So I haven't been able to analyze it, to be able to comment on it in any manner. So that was just brought up. It's kind of a document dump at the last minute, which really doesn't give us a chance to fully analyze it. So I'm not going to speak to that. Specifically as it relates to permit parking or parking being enforced, that's something obviously we would defer to the city of Glendale, whether it be the police department or any other neighborhood enforcement, code enforcement, that would be their responsibility. Pacific BMW has nothing to do with the enforcement as it relates to those items. In terms of the loading and unloading, I would defer that to representatives from Pacific BMW.
So this is Chi from Pacific BMW. I'm the property manager. For the question about the unloading on Garfield, we were actually told by the City of Glendale Police Department, who created a designated unloading zone on Garfield, and we were instructed to unload there only, and that we were not allowed to unload on Brand Boulevard at all. So the issue of unloading on Garfield was not created by us. We were instructed to do so, and loading zone was created specifically for that reason.
Sorry about that. So just to understand this, the police department designated an unloading zone on Garfield for you and prohibited it along Brand?
Correct. I forget how long ago it was. Maybe I think it was before COVID. There was a motorcycle police officer who I guess was in charge of the project and came by and spoke to us and said, this is what's going to happen. They posted loading and unloading zone signs along the curb and striped it yellow and instructed us to unload there only on Garfield.
Okay. And do you have any other comments? No?
None for Pacific.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I just have a few questions. Just to clarify, in a nutshell, this is an above ground parking garage. And most of that proposed structure is considered floor area. And so the project requires parking because the project requires parking because it contains new floor area. So in this case, the parking structure requires parking. Is that kind of in a nutshell, Mr. Khan, what's going on?
Yes, that's exactly what's going on. And that's why I referenced in my original presentation that this is literally a technicality where parking is requiring parking.
Right, okay. And just to clarify, the whole structure is at this point proposed for inventory parking?
Yes, the entire structure is for inventory parking. And then as was originally stated, these solar panels will be relocated to the top of the parking structure. And those are that's the use itself.
Okay. And is there a reason why there's handicap parking proposed right as you enter the garage?
I would defer to Robert Plant, our architect, for that question.
Okay.
The code requires handicap parking. It's a percentage of the overall parking for the facility.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch your last statement.
This is Robert Plant, the architect.
Yeah.
Code is going to request that we provide handicap parking, not so much for customers, but for handicap employees.
Okay. I think you mentioned in your presentation, Mr. Khan, that you've reviewed the conditions of approval, the proposed conditions of approval, and you're fine with all of them?
Mr. Kiesel, I've reviewed the environmental document. There's 2 mitigation measures attached to it, and there's also a monitoring program that we agree with and approve. And then we've looked at the conditions of approval for the parking reduction permit and have gone through them. And we looked at them. I did not have any concerns with them. I'll defer to also our architect and Pacific BMW to see if they had any concerns with those conditions.
I do not have any issues with the conditions.
Okay, great. And that also includes the comments from the various departments, that some of which I summarized and read some of them. Those are incorporated into the conditions. Have you all reviewed those comments?
Okay.
I haven't seen them specific. I'm currently working on a similar structure for Star 4 just down the street. I would assume they would be the same conditions, and I believe I can address them in an effective manner.
Okay. Just to clarify, looks like the existing building on Brand and Garfield on the subject site is not going to be touched. Looks like it's a 1-story building that's being preserved, correct?
That is correct. It's currently a body shop. We remodeled that facility 5 years ago, 6 years
Okay.
ago.
Up to 6, 7.
Yeah. So it's up and operational. It provides refurbished BMW products if your car gets damaged. BMW is now requiring that a lot of the larger dealers now have a body shop. And
Okay.
this will be in effect for quite some time.
And so that building on the exterior, nothing is changing.
That is correct. We're not touching it.
Does the proposed parking structure have access from Acacia?
No.
No. So if I was turning from Acacia onto the subject site, I couldn't get into the parking garage from there.
You have it locked, don't you, Chief?
I'm not sure. Mr. Keith, are you saying if you were to enter the driveway from Acacia, would you land directly into the new structure? Is that the question?
No, what my question is it looks like you've got, and let me, just give me a second and I'll pull up the site plan. I just wasn't clear. You've got a little finger of your site that touches Acacia. And it looks like now there is, there's access to the site from Acacia, like a little driveway with some parking and then a building on the kind of the western part. If you drive down that finger and get to the main part of the site, the subject site, can you drive into the parking structure there, or is it a solid wall?
No, you can drive in from that section. I was understanding that they were going to keep that locked for security reasons because you've got a lot of money in inventory. In most of my other facilities, there's one way in, one way out, so that the guards can monitor cars coming and going.
Got it. Just when I looked at the site this morning on Google, the driveway was wide open. So it was just a curiosity question. But that does lead to another question. Say, for instance, I'm driving south on South Brand. What's preventing me from, turning right into that parking structure? How am I going to know that that parking structure is not for me to park?
Signage.
Okay, so you're gonna have signage on the building or adjacent to the building?
That is correct.
Okay. Because I noticed on one of the plans I saw there were bollards. Are those bollards going to be upright all the time, aside from when a car is retrieved from inventory?
The parking along the street will be of a retail nature where they could display used cars or a new vehicle they currently have. And after hours, the bollards are prevented from leaving the property.
Okay. So basically they're only in the upright position when the facility's closed?
Correct, for security reasons.
Yeah, okay. And then have you thought any about the interface between the entrance exit to the parking garage and then the public right of way, the sidewalk along Brand Boulevard? How to make that as safe as possible so that cars entering and exiting the site are, fully aware of pedestrians on the sidewalk there. Have you thought of anything that would like slow the cars down in that area?
Unlike a parking structure where you have probably 1,000 car trips a day, for a 450 car parking structure.
Yeah.
A warehouse lot, you might have 5 cars coming and going. On a weekend, you'll probably have 3 times that, but they don't sell that many cars a day. And
Okay.
most of the fast moving inventory would be over in the main building where the showroom is. This would be additional inventory, which the big advantage now is going to be a salesman can walk to the building, pull a car, and bring it over to show to a customer.
Okay, so what I'm hearing from you is, potential hazards that come from having an entrance to a parking garage where it meets the sidewalk is not going to occur that much because it's not operating like a standard parking garage. It's really only used to get access to cars that a customer may be interested in.
That is correct. It's very, very low volume.
Okay.
And
Right.
we'll have mirrors and what have you so that they can see as best they can. But
Yeah.
again, it's very low volume.
Okay. All right. I believe those were all my questions. So I think what I'll do now is take the case under submission. This hearing is officially closed. Thank you for everyone's participation, and so the meeting is over. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.